Crypt of Perpetual Darkness. Is this an expansion that you would consider to be divisive? Is it something that's going to divide the fans? It's such a dramatic way to put it. We're going to talk about this using the age-old YouTube clickbait formula, applying a question in the form of, is it worth it? But I came prepared today, and I'm actually going to have a bit of a surprising answer maybe for you. There's a lot of folks who, as I predicted already, are looking at this expansion and they're questioning the future of Avalon Hill's HeroQuest run. They're questioning future expansions, the quality, the content. They're saying this is bare bones. There's nothing here. This is unfinished. Is that the case? Are we looking at something that has to be thrown together with no content and offered at the same MSRP as past expansions because of rising costs? Are they trying to pull one over on us? Are we really looking at the lack of miniatures other than the lovely, impressive Venom sculpt, the reissue, and saying that this doesn't come with enough and that it's not worth it? And why? Why is it so easy to ignore the consistent releases by the company and ignore the content that is there in favor of saying, well, this doesn't come with enough miniatures, therefore it's not worth it? I'm Ash. This is HeroQuest. Welcome home, brave heroes. We're going to talk about this. And I came prepared. We're going to disclaimer. We're going to say not all small box expansions are created equal. We have a lot of Keller's Keep and Return of the Witchlord small box expansions, and these are not offered at the same price as the newer small box expansions because these bad boys had to be made by the truckload. There had to be a lot of these. These were intended to be the first expansions that you would want to play, that you should look at the market and say, I need to get those next. After finishing the core game of HeroQuest, you would get these expansions in your bundle deals. They have the exact same sculpts as the miniatures already included in the game. That stuff, as produced as it was at the scale as it was produced, it had to be at a lower price point for the consumer. And it had to be as accessible as possible, as early as possible in the HeroQuest game. And I'm talking on meta terms as well. In the HeroQuest marketing game, this stuff had to be accessible, pushed out. They're not going to charge $34.99 MSRP for Keller's Keep or Return of the Witchlord. Wasn't going to happen. Now, let's come into the present and let's take a look at the latest small box expansions, which are, of course, obviously Prophecy of Talora and Spirit Queen's Torment. These are the previously mythic gated expansions. I'm just going to call them that because I think that the word is cool. I think it conveys everything that I need to say without having to go into like a 15-word disclaimer. The mythic gated expansions. Previously mythic gated, but that's how I'll refer to them. Prophecy of Talora and Spirit Queen's Torment. The Crypt of Perpetual Darkness is the latest and the last of the 3 exclusive expansions that came with the mythic tier of HeroQuest in its re-release run in 2021. With the release of Crypt of Perpetual Darkness, everything is laid out on the table. Everything is out there. Everything is going to be available for the consumer to get. We are only missing a small handful of things that were made available during the Mythic run. That is the 3 figures that were called out to be exclusive that we could understandably never see released in retail. That's our Witchlord, our Sir Ragnar, and our Wizard that looks like Mentor figures. We also have not yet seen the alternate gender sculpts of the heroes. We had a female barbarian, a male elf, a female dwarf, and a female wizard. And yes, we've had female barbarians and we've had alternate genders of the other heroes and stuff since then, but they weren't these exact sculpts that came with the mythic tier. So we're still thinking that these sculpts and these cards with the art that reflects these sculpts is maybe going to come in a future release. Now, just to address those really quick for all the people who were hoping that that would be included in Joe's expansion, I'm sorry. I think that it makes a lot more sense that those would not be relocated to Joe's expansion, Crypt of Perpetual Darkness. I think that those would have been an expansion more closely tied to the main line of HeroQuest rather than the guest appearance quest creator, if that makes sense. I also want to preface the rest of this video by saying, at this point, it should be known. It should be considered and not forgotten that the biggest change between Crypt of Perpetual Darkness's retail release upcoming and all past HeroQuest expansions is going to be the creative direction, the art direction, the presentation, the fact that the cards are foil finished. All of that stuff is the biggest difference cumulatively than what has been offered so far. It's not actually the lack of content, and I'm going to talk about the lack of content, and that's going to be the bulk of this video. But the perceived lack of content, and this is going to be maybe surprising. And as I've said before, this is because this is a celebrity-tied expansion. This is something that has a name attached to it, a name that has nothing to do with HeroQuest. And yes, the expansions, Spirit Queen's Torment, Prophecy of Talor, these were expansions that had names attached to them. We had Teos Abadia, we had Stephen Baker. Absolutely, these are people who deserve, I think, to have their name on the box somewhere, and we have seen their name and we know who they are. But this is much more presented as, hey, look at what you guys are getting from me, the celebrity. Isn't this cool? And we could see that just oozing throughout the expansion in the presentation of its contents. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of self-serving, in my opinion, presentation. There's nothing in this expansion that's going to let you forget that it's Joe Manganiello's Crypt of Perpetual Darkness and not just a HeroQuest expansion. It kind of feels like, because of the presentation of it, it's almost fan fiction, and it shouldn't belong in the canon timeline or anything like that. But it is what it is. Your table, however you feel about that, is totally in your custody, and you're right, whatever you have to say about that. But I want to talk about the contents of the last two expansions, and these are all MSRP of $34.99 USD. They all have the same price, okay? So let's look at the contents of Spirit Queen's Torment. We're looking at 36 pages in the book, 35, and then you flip the page to get your last page. So 36 pages, that's 18 sheets that were stapled together. It's 9 sheets that were stapled together and folded over. All right, so 36 pages, 15 cards, 6 dice, 15 minis, 15 finely detailed miniatures. There are no extras in this box. There are no tiles, nothing else. All right, so Spirit Queen's Torment, we've got the information out there. Prophecy of Talor is also a 36-page book, quest book. It has 14 cards. It has 6 dice, it has 15 miniatures, and no extras. So far, these two expansions are on par with one another, with Prophecy of Talor having one fewer mini. But I actually think the selection of minis is worth more with Prophecy of Talor. I mean, with Spirit Queen's Torment, you get the Orc, and with Prophecy, you get not only the Warlock, which is objectively a nicer character and a cooler character, but also the gargoyle form, the gargoyle cast in red, and the gargoyle cast in Haribo. I mean, but whatever. So keeping in mind the contents of those two expansions, when Crypt of Perpetual Darkness was announced, people thought, okay, maybe, and myself included, we're going to get a similar lineup of 15 miniatures, but that Venom Dragon sculpt has got to be one of them, so we're probably going to lose a few minis to get that made up for, right? So far, that's kind of where our brains were at. Now that the contents have been revealed, and you can see the content list on the back of the box by going to Amazon, Hasbro Pulse, whatever, we see that it's a 28-page book. This means 7 sheets instead of 9. That's not a huge loss. In a vacuum, it means we're missing 8 pages, but it's still 10 quests. It's still the exact same book as the original Crypt of Perpetual Darkness. Actually, we know that it's 10 quests. We don't know that it has 28 pages, but I mean, it's got to have 28 pages because the very first quest starts on page 7 in the existing book that came with the Mythic tier, and the Rat and Candle Tavern starts on page 7 of the updated book as well. So we know that these quests don't take up more than 2 pages. It's not likely that we're going to get extra pages of quest notes or art spread across several pages to make up for the missing 8 pages. We don't really have missing pages. We just have a quest book that has fewer sheets in it for its production. But the very back of the quest book is just the epilogue, which should just take a page, right? And then the artifact and equipment reference, of which we have 10 cards. We've got the Crown of Shadows, Dragon Spear, Ring of Return, Magical Throwing Dagger, Holy Water, 2 spell scrolls, the Battle Axe, a crossbow, and a Potion of Speed, Lightning Bolt and Tempest being the spell scrolls. All right, so far we have a slightly smaller quest book. That's not to cut costs. That's just how big the quest book is. And that's assuming they haven't added anything to bring the page count up, which I don't imagine they would have. We do have new art in the quest book. We have art in the quest notes section on at least one of the quests. That's confirmed by looking at the pictures. The Rat and Candle Tavern has got this fun little image of a rat eating a candle. Looks like it could very well serve as the picture etched into the sign of that actual tavern. It's clever. It's fun. I would like to think that there's going to be more artwork like that throughout the book. And I think that's a lovely detail. I think that that's really, really cool. So that extra bit of production cost going into that more than makes up for the extra pages that we could have had. But we know that this is not going to have more mechanics explained at the beginning, such as mechanics to explain the alchemy deck or anything like that. Okay, moving on from the book. We talked about that way too long. We're at the cards. So the first two expansions I listed off had 15 cards and 14 cards respectively. Crypt of Perpetual Darkness has 20. And they checked the box to apply the foil finish to all the cards. So far, we're at a surplus of 5 cards. Okay, and we've got the foil finish to consider. So surplus of 5 cards. Let's move on. Next up is dice. Common to all 3 of the expansions. Spirit Queen's Torment, Prophecy of Talor, they've each got 6 dice. This has 8 dice. We have very plain looking dice. I don't know what to tell you. They are so plain. They could have really rizzed these things up. They could have added sparkles into the black like they did with the dragon. There's all manner of things they could have done. But we have 6 black combat dice, and we have 2 very plain black movement dice with white pips. It doesn't get more plain than that, but the fact remains we are now at a surplus of 2 dice. These 2 movement dice were not in the other expansions. Okay, for miniatures, we just have 1. The previous 2 expansions had 15 minis apiece. This one just has 1, and this is the part that people get hung up on. They look at this, they say, this is missing 14 miniatures, therefore it's not worth it. They can't get past this point. Listen, let's keep going. The 1 miniature is Venom, okay? That's not going to have the same value as 15 mobs, maybe, to a lot of people. They're going to look at the dragon sculpt and say, is that it? This should have more. And I don't disagree with that. There should have been more miniatures to kind of pad out that visual aspect of it, right? If not for any other reason, in terms of presentation, just a few more miniatures really would have sold this to a lot more people. Even existing miniatures, but just a few more. Just like 10 more. Just 20 more is all I'm asking. 30 miniatures, final offer. 30 Dread Warriors, speckled with black. Fine, 40 miniatures, but that's my final offer. That's my bottom dollar. Okay, that's enough of that. We have one Venom. Let's move on. We have, with this expansion, where the other ones have run out of materials to give us. They're done. We can't compare anymore. This expansion has 2 cardboard tile sheets and 1 pad of character sheets. Okay? All right, so stay with me. We've got a pad of character sheets. Maybe you didn't ask for this. Maybe you didn't want this. But the fact remains, they are there. We have a pad of character sheets, and it's not the same pad of character sheets as before. This is one with a bit of a different design. And whatever you think this pad of character sheets is worth, well, that could be subjective. We won't talk about the value of just the pad of character sheets. The cardboard tile sheets, of which this has 2, and both of them are unique. Both of them it's not copies of one another. One is our double-sided tavern. When you flip it over, it's the Crypt of the Dragon, Venom. The other one is all of the 1x1 tiles that we need to play the game with its special mechanics. Just as a reminder of what those are: acid pool traps, grasping vines traps, dread skulls. And then, of course, the temple and tavern. I was calling it a crypt. It's a temple. I've never understood why that's a temple, but whatever. Maybe a temple to a dragon looks more like a crypt because of all of the bones strewn around. These are actually not cheap to make. Yes, if you're producing them on a wide scale, they would be cheaper. This is true of minis as well. This is true of anything. This is true of anything that would be packaged in with this expansion. That's why we're not talking about inherent value in a vacuum. We are comparing the contents of Crypt of Perpetual Darkness with the previous 2 Mythic Gate expansions. So I'm assuming most folks are going to see the MSRP value and just nope out because there's a lack of miniatures. But what's the value of a mini? We need to make up for the loss of 15 minis, okay? So let's think about our surplus for this so far. We've got 5 cards. We've got 1 pad of sheets. We've got 2 tile sheets, not tiles, tile sheets. we have 2 dice, and we have venom. Okay, this makes a little more sense, right? So are all of the missing miniatures worth the same? Is a goblin the same as an abomination in terms of value? I don't think so, but it's impossible to know what each one of these it costs to produce. Let's ignore that for now and just start trading, okay? So how many minis is venom worth? I think this is worth at least 2 miniatures. I think it would be easy to get people to agree that it's worth at least 2. I think that 3 or 4 is actually more reasonable. We don't have large monsters in any of the small box expansions. It doesn't happen. I have criticized Venom for his lack of largeness. It's a dragon, and it's on this pillar, and it still only takes up 1 by 1 tile. If HeroQuest ever gets verticality and height rules, Venom will then be much larger, but for now, he takes up 1 tile. That is it. How many miniatures is Venom worth to you? Would you agree? At least 2? Can we compromise on 3? Can I sell you Venom for 3 miniatures? I think a lot of people would think that that's a fair trade. I think 3 would be fair. I think more people, maybe not more than the 3 camp, but I think that there are some people who would think 4 or 5 miniatures even would be fair, because this is a whole dragon, okay? It's not like it's Flying Dragon Agheel from Elden Ring, but it's still a larger miniature. It's a very unique boss miniature, and it's cast in this really cool material. We're going to disregard the cool material, though, because if this had come with a lot of minis, they all would have been cast in this material. Of that, I am sure. I think it would have been thematic. It would have been consistent. Not that consistency means anything with this expansion, but let's move on. Okay, how many minis is 2 dice worth? Keep in mind the production techniques for these 2 items are very different. Also, they're black dice, they're extremely plain, so on the other end of that argument, they could have been acquired by the tens of thousands for a very cheap price. So 2 dice, let's say 2 miniatures, because this could have been the same cost as maybe 2 goblins, okay? And maybe it's not even 100% about just production cost, but for the sake of argument, 2 miniatures, 2 small miniatures. So far, we're at 2 plus the 3 that maybe we can agree on for Venom. So we've got 5 miniatures there, okay? What's the pad worth? What's the pad worth in terms of trade-off? Do you think people would have been okay losing 2 miniatures to get a pad of character sheets if they wanted the character sheets? If this was the first time your table had access to a new pad of character sheets and you didn't get Frozen Horror because whatever reason, and that comes with a pad of character sheets, and you didn't get anything else that came with a new pad of character sheets, and this was the first expansion that you got that had the character sheets, you might think that they were cool looking. I do. I actually am a fan of the character sheets for this. This is one of the things I like the most about it, maybe after the dragon. The tavern tile, I'm even kind of iffy on. I like the pad of character sheets very much, but anyways, the pad of sheets, let's call that 2 miniatures, if you think that's fair. I think maybe more, but let's settle on 2. Now we're at 7 miniatures. Now we have the tiles. Talked a little bit about the tiles already. They cost more than you think to produce. They do cost more than you might think to produce. It depends very much on the setup of the machine and how much you're going to produce, just like with anything else. But tiles in a vacuum do cost more than you might think to produce. So with 2 sheets and both of them being unique, would you think maybe lose 2 miniatures per sheet? I think that that's pretty fair. I actually think that that's very fair. It should be maybe more, but 2 per sheet, maybe 5 miniatures altogether for the 2 sheets would be a more accurate assessment. I could be wildly off on any of these values, but I think that is a fair mental trade-off, okay? You have to remember that the tile for the tavern and the temple is not a small tile. It is a 6 by 9, okay? It's one of the largest tiles there is in HeroQuest. It's one of the largest rooms in HeroQuest. It's a 6 by 9. Think for a second, if this was not a 6 by 9, it could have very easily have been a 6 by 4 and a 6 by 5 sharing the same sheet, right? Then would you have thought that maybe this would be worth a little bit more? What if, because those 2 together would take up the same real estate on the sheet, what if we had 2 3 by 4s and then 2 3 by 5s, and they were all unique rooms and they were double-sided? You might think, well, that would give you a lot more utility, and I would agree with you, you'd be right. But they would not be as big. You would not be able to make the same kinds of scenarios with those as you would one large tavern tile. And we already have a bunch of tiles that are smaller than the tavern. We have tiles native to the board. We have a ton of tiles that have come with other expansions that are around this size. But the fact remains, it's a 6x9 tile. It's pretty massive. So we have two of these, one for rooms and the other one is for utility. It's for little chits and tokens and pieces that are going to go onto the board. Those are less interesting maybe, but they're still necessary to have and they still have a cost. You can't just get those for free. So we're going to call it 5 miniatures for those two tiles together. Now that we have a perspective on what these tiles could have been and how, if you think, well, that would have been worth more, it actually would have been worth close to the same, unless they were like laser cut, and then the factory would have charged by the actual cutting inch. But none of that matters. They aren't laser cut because they don't smell like smoke. Probably steel cut. All right, and finally, we have 5 cards, and we have an option that turns on the foil finish for all of the cards. That's our remaining mini surplus gone. Okay, so if Venom is worth 3 minis, and the 2 dice are worth 2 minis, and the pad is worth 2 minis, and our lovely 2 tiles are worth 3, 4, 5 minis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then that's just a cost of 3 more minis to exchange for the 5 cards. And I know there are 20 cards, but if you consider that you should have gotten 15 without a compromise to the miniature count, then we have that 5 surplus. And then that's our remaining minis traded in for cards. And then we get the foil. Yes, these are things that you might not have necessarily asked for, but they still cost money to make. They still are things that they decided to go ahead and produce and put in the box. So there are a lot of things that perhaps would not entice you to get this. If you have the original Mythic expansion, you're not going to need anything here to play what you have. You've already got Venom. You've already got all the cards you need. You're good. And I would say that all the stuff that's in here that's presented the way it is to try to sell it to people like you who don't need this, because they want to try to make stuff rebuyable so that they can sell it and make money, obviously. But for a brand new player of HeroQuest, all this stuff is pretty original and new, so it'll be worth it for them. So this video is not really made to defend the price in a vacuum. It's not to say this is worth it. It's to say this is the same price as the other 2 Mythic gates. And honestly, with all of the global shenanigans going on with regards to tariffs and imports and pricing and things like that, whether you act proactively or you are trying your hardest to react as effectively as you can to the various price changes, I'm surprised this didn't cost more. I'm surprised this wasn't advertised with a higher MSRP. I'm thankful it wasn't. I'm quite honestly surprised and refreshed that it wasn't. There are some people who bring up like Joe's Cut, like if there was a royalty involved. And I mean, produced by Hasbro, they're probably kings at the royalty game. I'm sure they know exactly how to manage that effectively. But I don't think that that really plays into the price point at all. I think that everything that we have here is fairly consistent in terms of asset cost being produced at the scale at which the previous 2 Mythic Gate expansions were produced. The predictive scale, we'll probably need X tens of thousands or X hundreds of thousands of units. So this is how much that's going to cost, and this is how much the MSRP is going to be. I'm more than certain that the people who are pertinent to this process at Avalon Hill, at the negotiating table with Joe, did everything they could to bring the expansion where it needed to be perceived worth its $34.99 MSRP. That's probably the number that they had in mind as the end goal, and I'm sure that they did everything they could to bring it up to that price point in terms of value to the player. There'll be a lot of people who look at this, see that it doesn't have a bunch of miniatures, and automatically write it off, and I don't think that's fair. But anyways, that's what this video is about. I will eternally think that the larger box expansions are worth way more for your money. They always have a ton of everything. You always get a bunch of different tiles. You get a bunch of different minis, a boss, maybe a couple of bosses, a bunch of new cards, some heroes, hero cards. Jungles of Delthrak was an amazing value for what you got in that box. There was a lot of stuff in that box. Jungles of Delthrak could have been like $10 more. I wouldn't have batted an eye. I would not have been angry, annoyed. I wouldn't have even pointed it out. But that's all this video is about. I really just wanted to kind of defend that the MSRP is normal, and people who are worried about the future, don't be. You've seen Avalon Hill handle these expansions as delicately as I think they can. I think we're going to see Wizards of Morcar up next, and I really think that that announcement or that tease or whatever it is going to be this year. I'm very optimistic about that. I've got no connections. I've got no inside data about that, no info. I'm just very optimistic about it. But I'm done yapping, so thank you very much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you in the next exciting adventure. Until then, have a great rest of your day. Heroes, farewell for now.